relationship, which I look back on as like the first thing that kicked things off, was I said, what are my values and how can I live in alignment with my values and start showing up as who I really am, right? Got that job. I would not be here if I didn't get that job. And that didn't make sense to me at the time that was going to be a step in me like starting my business.
Welcome to the Raw and Real podcast. Are you dreaming of changing your life through opening a business? Or are you curious what obstacles entrepreneurs had to overcome on their journey? Then you're in the right place. My name is Agnes Billig and I'm your host. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real. Today's guest on the show is Brooke Monaghan. Brooke is a coach, podcaster, speaker, and writer who helps entrepreneurs create businesses that bring their greatest gifts to the world, align with their values, and honor the lifestyles that they desire. Her work focuses on helping business owners unlearn the conditioning that has them ditching their instincts, intuition, and integrity in favor of doing business the right way. Hey, Brooke, it's really awesome to have you on today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm really curious to get to know more about you. So I was wondering, can you give us a little bit of deep dive about what it was like for you to grow up and how you actually really started your career?
Yes, I would love to. Telling a story is kind of integral to what I do. So I'm excited that this is kind of what you start with. I was the sort of person who knew very early on that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I would say probably from the time that I was maybe 13, 14 years old, I was just kind of obsessed with businesses, and not in the sort of way that I think we oftentimes hear about, not in the like I was going around and like starting businesses and like, selling candy bars at lunch or whatever, but more so in the like observing people and the fact that they got to do whatever they wanted every day. And me feeling like I had to live according to what I was being told to do. I had to go to school and I didn't want to. I was like killing myself trying to get good grades. And these people had figured out a way to just do whatever the hell they wanted. And I was just fascinated by that. Like when you go on like vacation or whatever and you meet the random person who's like selling some random thing on the beach and just like, I just want to sell like jewelry on the beach, right? Like those were the kinds of business owners that I was always fascinated by. I did my like senior project in high school. I wrote a business plan. I went to school for entrepreneurial management, and yet like after all of this time of listening to podcasts and reading about entrepreneurs and talking to different entrepreneurs, I was never able to actually like get myself to move on anything. And I always felt like I didn't have a thing. Like I didn't have any sort of talent or any sort of hobby that I could monetize. So I just couldn't get myself to do it. And looking back on my life now, I can sort of see why that was. And it's something that is really integral to the work that I do now. So I grew up in a like rural area, and it was me and my sister and my mom and dad and my sister. This is like a very personal part of my story, but it really is important. And I didn't realize this until kind of recently. My sister was always like almost killing my mom with like the shit that she would pull. Like she has a lot of mental illness. It's not her fault, but it was just like she took all of the energy that my family had, and it was just constant chaos, constant fighting, constant just like it was total chaos. And I think that very early I realized that like my role in my family was just to be like perfect, because it was like there wasn't any emotional energy available for any of my shit. It was just like I needed to figure out how to like just figure my own stuff out, not give my mom a hard time, not cause any more fights, because it was just kind of chaotic in my house. And so I definitely grew up as like the perfect kid, and super rule follower, like so afraid of like getting into trouble, just because I think that I had wrapped so much of my identity up in doing things the right way. and being really level-headed. I also have realized recently that like there was definitely a lot of messages around me. I grew up in a with my all of my male cousins and all of my uncles and my dad. It was like I was like the only girl born into that side of the family in like generations. Like everyone else was married in, and even my sister, she was my half sister. So it was like a very male upbringing. And I definitely had a lot of messages telling me that like men know the way that things are. And women, if you think you understand how it goes, you're probably fooling yourself. And like just listen to what the men have to say because they know how to make money, they know how money should be spent, they know the truth, and you don't really get it as a woman. And so I definitely spent a lot of my life trying to prove how level-headed and smart of a woman I was. I wasn't a typical woman. I wasn't a typical girl, right? And it was
So was
really
it for you that you had to then get a lot of degrees to show that you can do it, to show that you're smart? On it, in what way would you um, do that
uh,
mainly?
it was in like a 4.0 GPA. uh only agree to do something if you are certain you can do it perfectly. Very much I very much suffered from the like big fish in a small pond sort of syndrome where I would only find myself in situations where like if there was no risk involved, like if I was only going to do something if I could do it perfectly. And I mean, even like I wanted to start a business, so of course I'm going to go to school for entrepreneurial management and get a degree in entrepreneurial management rather than just starting a business, right?
Uh-huh.
um, and so what I know now looking back on that is that for me, perfection really felt like so much of my identity was wrapped up in that. And really felt to me as a child like that was kind of a matter of like survival, right? And this is true for many of us if you look back at messages that you learned when you were a kid through a really kid-sized sort of lens. You think that you have to do certain things to be accepted in your family, and it really can feel as big as life and death as a child. And you grow up with that. And I think that what I realized is that through all of these years of being obsessed with entrepreneurship and trying to learn from entrepreneurs and listen to the podcasts and read the articles and read the books and watch Shark Tank and like whatever the fuck I was doing, what I was trying to do was gather all of the information so that I could arrange things in such a way that I could guarantee that I could do entrepreneurship without any risk. Like I
Mm-hmm.
could arrange a perfect plan and avoid any mistakes. Doesn't work that way ever. Like it just doesn't. And actually I've realized now that like screwing up is such an important part of the process, right? And so the reason why I never could move on anything was because that part of my identity growing up that was so important to me, like I couldn't reconcile how I could be an entrepreneur and also be like the best and do it perfectly. And it's because those things don't actually reconcile.
So I'm
Go
also
ahead.
curious because you mentioned that there weren't any qualities in yourself that you could identify that would really make you special in the way that you could pursue them and monetize them, right? Um, so how did you figure that piece of the puzzle out?
I was listening to, I mean, podcasts honestly changed my life because I just heard the right person. I heard a woman who her name is Tiffany Hahn. If anyone wants to look her up, I still have a close relationship with her to this day. I was working retail. So what ended up happening was I left. I got my degree in entrepreneurial management. At the time, I was working in retail. I was like running two boutiques while I was in school, and I ended up just like continuing in retail. And I ended up like going through some assistant management roles and some GM roles and whatever. And truly for me, this isn't, I mean, I don't, I've heard some people say this. I know this isn't the case for everyone, but truly for me, I've always known deep in me somewhere that I was meant to work for myself in some capacity. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I was never going to be satisfied if I wasn't working for myself. If I had to live my life according to what other people were telling me to do, I wasn't going to be satisfied, which is so interesting because that's how I was living my life, was just do everything I was told to do perfectly, right? And one day I was listening to a podcast and I heard Tiffany Hahn, and she was like talking about how she was at the time, she was like a brand strategist, which is not what she does now. And she was talking about how she works with women to show them that if they actually just trust in who they are and let that be seen with all of their imperfection, like as much as they can, actually, that's what builds trust with clients. And that's what can allow you to actually build a brand. And I was like, shit, I wish I had a business so I could work with this woman. Cause like, that's what I need. Cause I don't trust anything I am. I always feel like I have to cover up who I am in order to fit into this mold of perfection.
Yeah.
I ended up, she has a podcast, and I started listening to her podcast, and she said something about like, I have this mentorship program. It's opening up at this time. And if you want to join it. And I literally I heard that podcast episode. I was working in retail. I was managing a store. I heard that podcast episode in August. I joined her program in September, and I quit my job in October.
Wow.
And I was just never the same. It was like I heard the right person say it in such a way, and something clicked for me, and I was like, holy crap, this is all me. This is not my circumstances that are keeping me from doing this. This is not all of the things that I was telling myself. The circumstances just weren't right that I couldn't start a business. This was just me holding myself back because I felt like I couldn't take a chance on myself. And if I took a chance and it didn't work out, what would that mean about me? Right. And I needed to unravel that. And I think that at some point I had heard somebody being interviewed, and they were talking about just doing some sort of consulting. And I'm like, I've known what consulting was my whole life. Why did I never consider that maybe if I'm so obsessed with business, I could just help other people with their businesses, right? Like, why did that never click for me? And suddenly I realized I could do that if I wanted to. And yeah, so that's ultimately what ended up happening. Was I quit my retail job, and I was like, okay, the first thing I need is a job that leaves me with some level of energy at the end of the day where I can actually start working on my business. And I ended up applying to a nonprofit that was totally aligned with my values, where I felt like I could go to work and be honest about, hey, I'm doing this during the day, but at night I'm doing this other thing. And while I got into that job as an assistant, it was the only job that I applied to. They loved me. I loved them. I was out of retail. I was working for this nonprofit healthcare provider as an assistant. But when I got in, my GM vibe just couldn't take the back seat. And I was like, this department needs X, Y, and Z. And I was like, supposed to be an assistant, but I ended up really getting my hand dirty. I'm like, how can we make this department better? Just got so into it. And they ended up sending me through some process improvement trainings and project management professional trainings. They got me certified as a project management professional. And then I told them that I was going to leave because I was moving across the country. My husband got a job down here in New Orleans. And so I told them I was leaving, and they were like, what are we going to do without you? And I was like, well, you could just hire me back as a project management consultant. And they were like, okay. And that was my first client. And
Oh,
I just
wow.
didn't get a job.
So you basically then started working for them as a freelancer, as a
Yep.
self-employed person.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I negotiated with them. I said, here's the deal. I'm going to be paying my own benefits. So that saves you some money on your end. And we both know that I can get way more done. I'm really efficient, and I don't actually need to be in the office 8 hours a day in order to get my job done. So with all of that, how about you pay me and I doubled my hourly rate.
Nice.
And they were like, sure. They're still a client of mine. They pay me a lot more now than they used to. And that relationship, which I look back on as the first thing that kicked things off, was I said, what are my values and how can I live in alignment with my values and start showing up as who I really am, right? Got that job. I would not be here if I didn't get that job. And that didn't make sense to me at the time that was going to be a step in me starting my business, but it was. And I think that it was because of the fact that it was the first thing I really ever did in my life, where I was looking inside of myself and being who am I really? And how do I move in that direction? And it might not make sense to take a $10,000 a year pay cut, which I did to take that job, but we're just going to see what happens. And it worked out.
So was it for you that you really, started thinking about what are the values that align with you, in the sense that, because like you mentioned before, some people like to have a side hustle, right? And
Mhm.
they still have a full-time job, but then they kind of need to hide during the day job what they're actually about, what they're passionate about. And that they probably dream of the fact that they want to make this side hustle a full-time thing, right?
Mhm.
And usually in a corporate environment, people don't want to see that, right? Because they want to invest in you and they want to keep you and get like the money back that they're putting into you, right?
Mhm.
So how was that all for you to find that clarity? And where did you actually start looking to find the right offer?
Here's the thing. I mean, I thought I was going to go into that job and work on my business at night and be at the job during the day. That just didn't happen for me. And I've learned that that's because I'm never going to be okay working all the time. Like, I'm just never going to do it. And so, but finally, when I started my business, I totally took the leap. Like, I was like, I'm doing this and I'm not getting a job and I'm just going to make it work because it has to. Like, if I had a plan B, I felt like I wasn't going to ever go fully in. And so I wouldn't say that I ever really came to a point where it was like I had clarity around the offer. I think that it was just like it just happened. It was like they needed me. They didn't know what to do without me. I needed a client. And so it was just like, let's just do this. And I mean, to this day, like I still run into these times where it's like, how does this fit into my larger business? Like, how does that one client and the work that I'm doing with that client fit into my larger business? And then sometimes I have to say to myself, like, it doesn't matter really. Like it kind of does if you want to be offering more of that. But I also think that like it was sort of my way of having sort of the side hustle was to like keep doing the work that I was doing for them, just do it as a freelancer so I can dip my toes in the water of working for myself and then explore what the other offers are on the other side, on the side. And what I ended up doing was I was doing this work for them. And then I was kind of pitching myself as like a project management and process improvement consultant. And as I was working with people, I was getting these people who would be like, I just need to like systematize this and that. And like, I need to get all of my systems perfect before I can take on more clients or I won't be able to handle it. And all that I was seeing was they were so procrastinating on getting clients. Like they were doing exactly what I was doing before, which was let me set this up so that there's no risk that I can't handle it. Because they couldn't handle the idea that what if they start getting clients and then they find out they can't handle it? So let me get myself to feel as confident as possible before I start taking the leap. And for them, that was have a totally automated business, which was like not going to happen. And also, like, I say this all the time, but like, if you don't have enough clients that you can't handle taking on more clients, then your focus shouldn't be on scaling or systematizing. Your focus needs to be on getting clients and we're hiding. You know what I mean? So I was like starting with them to talk about systems, and then I would be like, so you're kind of procrastinating and we're going to talk about that. And I'd end up like coaching them on something totally different. And what ended up happening was people
Ah.
were then coming to me wanting me to coach them. And I was like, but I'm not a coach. Like I can't coach you because I'm not a coach. Go and talk to this person. And I was just
Mhm.
talking myself out of clients. And then over time, I was like, you know what? That's what I really want to be talking about, obviously. I want to be talking to people who are in the same situation that I was in, which is that they really want to move their business forward and they can't seem to figure out why, no matter how much they try to follow the advice of the gurus, why
Yeah.
they're not getting anywhere.
So what do you think is then the biggest blockage of someone who obviously, tries to get everything right,
Mm.
and they procrastinate on small tasks, like, for example, posting 10,000 times, but not actually directly reaching out to someone and asking the question, like, hey, do you want to work with me, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think a huge thing is fixed mindset versus growth mindset. For anyone who's listening, if you have never read Carol Dweck's work, if what I'm saying resonates for you, you need to read the book Mindset. I think that over time, I've learned that the wobbles, the things that I did that didn't work, the getting rejected and finding out I could handle it, the trying things and finding out it wasn't the right thing and trying something else, I would never, ever, 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 ever have gotten where I was without all of that. And I look back on that now and I am so grateful to past versions of myself for taking those risks, for like being brave enough to do the scary thing, because it's always the scary thing that gets you further. If you're trying to avoid being scared, you're probably procrastinating. And it's not that we make the mistake of thinking that if we are feeling fear or lack of confidence, then we're doing it wrong. We need to do all of the things first so that we can feel confident to take the next step. The truth is, for anybody who is living outside of their comfort zone, they're uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is a sign usually that you're moving in the right direction, not a sign that you're moving in the wrong direction. So I think that one of the main things is sort of rewiring our relationship with and our response, like our internal response and like nervous system kind of response that we have to fear and discomfort, and using it as a sign that we're moving in the right direction rather than running away. Because if you start and you say, okay, I could get this client right now, but oh my God, then I need to deliver. Holy shit, am I going to be able to handle it? Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to make sure that I can handle it before I reach out to the client.
Yeah.
Right? That's you hiding. That's just you running away from fear. So do
So
it with sweaty palms, do it with your hands shaking, and know that all of the rest of us are doing the same thing.
So do you have any tips on how to start that rewiring process, what we can maybe do on a daily basis to, get more comfortable with the idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that we talk about all the time, coaches talk about all the time, people talk about in the business world all the time is zone of genius, right? And I think that we talk about it the wrong way oftentimes. Um, Zone of genius, in the way that Gay Hendricks in his book The Big Leap talked about zone of genius, is actually a state of being. It's not about what do you do really, really well. Like it is. It's more so about you allowing yourself to be in a space where you feel this kind of expansive energy of like endless possibility, and not leaking energy into worrying about things that you can't actually control, not leaking energy into criticizing yourself, not leaking energy into like running away from that because you are trying to maybe do something that feels a little bit more comfortable. Like, for example, for those of us who come from maybe the corporate world or anyone who has a background similar to me, it probably feels more comfortable for you to be running around like a maniac, because to you, you're like, oh, if I'm working really, really hard, then I'm covering all of my bases. If I'm not working hard, I'm probably missing something, right? So to allow yourself to get into your true zone of genius and allow yourself to focus your energy on what your actual gifts are, what you need to do is expand your capacity for feeling more sort of positive emotion without telling yourself that there's a problem. So if you think to yourself, like, what is it that I'm avoiding right now? What is it that I know that I need to do that I'm avoiding kind of out of fear? And you think to yourself, like, okay, well, what if I could just do that? Right? Like, what if I could just allow myself to lean into that and to do it? And then you're going to have all of these beliefs that are going to come up and all these thoughts that are going to come up, and they're going to tell you, well, if you do that, then you might be exposed as a fraud. If you do that, then you're going to have to deliver. And what if you can't, whatever, right? You have the capacity at that moment to make a decision on which thoughts you're going to allow win. And if you say, no, you know what, in this moment, I'm going to choose to put like a shred more belief in the idea that this is going to work out, and you do it anyways, what happens is you actually expand your comfort zone. You kind of stretch yourself into like a new way of being and operating that allows you to take more risk. So I think that some of it just comes down to like, when you're feeling these feelings of fear, when you're feeling these feelings of, I can't do that because XYZ, take a second. You're not going to want to, because you're going to want everything to go faster than it actually does. And you're going to want to do everything immediately. And you're going to just want to run on pilot. But take a second and look at like, what is that thought? And is that necessarily true? And what if you just like experimented with trying on something else for like 5 minutes? Then what would you do? And just try it. So that's a place to start.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm curious, like, when was the moment that you were really doubting yourself? And what was going through your head, and what really did you do to get out of it?
Doubting myself. Oh, all the time. Like all the time. And this is the thing that I think that we don't hear enough people talk about. It's not like there's going to be a moment where you're going to push yourself past the doubt and then things are going to be easy from that point forward. I think that being in entrepreneurship is about getting comfortable moving forward even though you're doubting yourself. The doubt is going to be there, and your job isn't to try to make it go away. If you try to make the doubt go away, that's when you end up like spinning out in things that don't actually need your energy, right? That's when you end up in spinning out over the font on your website and trying to make your bio like seem more legit and taking another certification that you don't necessarily need. Those are ways that we try to make doubt go away. We need to get comfortable with being like, oh, I'm doubting myself, but I'm going to do this anyways. And I mean, I would say like, I don't know, the day that I sent my first invoice, I thought that the amount of money that I was asking for was nuts. And I can tell you now that I charged 10 times what I was charging them. And I just did it anyways because I don't know. I guess that I think that the biggest thing is like asking myself in those moments of doubt, if I give into this voice right now, then what are my options? And if you give into the doubt voice, your only option is to stay quiet and go away. And that's not an option for me because I've already decided I'm going to keep going with this thing and I'm going to make this work. And I deserve to be here just as much as anyone else. Why? Because I'm alive, and being alive means that I'm worthy. So if the only option that the voice leaves me with is shut up, that's not the voice to listen to. So, I mean, I would say those big moments would be like, yeah, the day I sent my first invoice, but also like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago when I was launching a program and it wasn't getting the enrollments that I had gotten when I launched the last time, and thinking to myself, what does this mean about me? Right? I help people in their businesses. Are people going to look at me and be like, oh, well, she can't even sell out her program, so why would I ask her to help me with mine? Right? Things
Yeah.
like that. It comes up all the time.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Oh, of
I mean,
course.
I'm sure you're gonna do still great on your launch.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I wrapped up the launch. I have half as many people in it as I did the last time. And it's going to be a smaller group, which means it's going to be even more valuable for them because they get to be in a small group experience. And so I have to remind myself of that. And also, this is the other thing that I get to remind myself of is how am I supposed to hold my clients in moments of doubt and fear and wobbling if I can't hold myself in that place, right? So no one can relate to perfection. No one can relate to you doing everything right and doing everything perfectly, but people can relate to, hey, I'm doing this right alongside you. And I screwed up 2 weeks ago and I'm still here and I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you don't have to be scared because I'm not scared. So that's what I mean. It's like those what you might look at as failure in the moment, those are the opportunities where more actually becomes available to you.
Do you still have a last key takeaway, a personal insight that helped you grow that you would like to share with us?
Oh man. I mean, the key to I just think that, for many of us, we have this sort of nagging inner knowing of like, there's more available to me than this. I'm capable of more than this. Um, this isn't right. Like, this isn't for me. This piece of advice that I was told to take, it just doesn't feel right. I think that the biggest thing is like that voice. I don't think that voice lies. I just don't think that that voice ever is lying. And I think that you can try to avoid the failure by, even if that voice leads you to a place where you experience temporary failure, it's going to be the kind of failure like I was just talking about, the kind of failure that you had to experience in order to get to that next place and learn what you needed to learn. So my key takeaway would just be like, always listen to that really like intuitive kind of nagging voice over anything else. And it can't be wrong. I just don't think that it can be wrong. I don't think it's possible.
And how can people get in touch with you?
I hang out mostly on Instagram for social. And I am at Briggs Monaghan. I can give you the info for that, but I take a lot of social media breaks. So the best way to get in touch with me is you can go to brooke-monaghan.com and you can on or you can my free training. I have a free training that will help you create an offer that's like really aligned for you and for your people. I love my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every week, and it is my favorite thing. I love writing, and I kind of pour my heart out into my newsletter, and I'm like very transparent. So that would be the best place to get in touch with me.
Awesome. I'm gonna sign up later. I don't think I did already. But thank you so much for sharing all of these great insights today. And for everyone who's watching or listening, we would love to hear what your favorite insight was from today's conversation. So make sure to let us know in the comments below the video.